All right, thank you very much. Thanks all for joining today. We'll get started. We're going to try to keep the energy up on this Monday. I'm Rich, this is Jody. We are going to talk to you about organized retail crime and fraud. We're going to talk about really three things. One is to kind of dispel some of the mystery of ORC, kind of get clarity around what we're even talking about. The second is we're going to talk about how in this era, cyber teams need to play a much bigger role in combating organized retail crime and fraud. And then we're going to take you through about 5 examples of areas that the industry is struggling with and some examples of where we've been able to make an impact at Target there. All right, before we get started, I am going to, I don't know how long I need to leave this disclaimer up to fulfill legal obligations, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and now we're going to get into the presentation, but let me start with a video, and you're going to hear some music in this video. It'll make you cringe a little bit, but listen closely to the words. There's a reason that this song is in the video, and we'll explain it later.
Thank you, Bob, for your refunded ebook. I already refunded 20,000 euros in total. I give a huge voucher to Bob. He is the best. This song is a vouch for you. Yeah. Okay.
Well, the holiday shopping season is ramping up, and so is organized theft.
What fuels this as an enterprise is the ease of reselling stolen merchandise on online marketplaces.
Crooks are turning to the internet, where security chips don't protect you.
Over 50 pages with hundreds of unknown information. Put that on your plate. Multiple reefer methods and even
And you can go to Spotify.
And then tonight, investigators are looking into whether those IDs were used to make phony returns to local big box stores.
Federal authorities and retailers are now sounding the alarm about the growing danger of organized retail crime that is sweeping the country.
Online marketplaces allow criminals to sell items quickly and anonymously.
This is an organized business that is looking to take advantage of consumers.
That's the victim of credit card fraud. Sevier thought she was protected when her replacement card came with a security chip. A few months later, she fell victim again.
the best. Save your money now. Buy the ebook instead of a refund service. You can easily get your investment back with one refund. R.I.P. to all the refunders.
Okay, like I said, we'll explain that one in a minute. But before we do, one of the most important things I want to make sure we do today is we really talk about when we say organized retail crime, this new era of fraud, what is it really that we're talking about? Perception versus reality. And I want to use an example that I think everybody at RSA is much more familiar with. Let's start with what we know very well, the hacker. So when I talk about a hacker, I notice people tend to get a very particular picture in their head. Anybody want to yell out, what's the hacker look like? Who's the bad guy? Right, the hoodie? This picture, right? So your mind goes to this, and 15 years or so ago, this, across most of the general public, this is the way they thought about hackers. Over time, we've all learned that this is not true. Even the general public starts to understand this now, right? When we talk about hacking, we're talking about organized groups that look much more like businesses than they do individuals. There's this entire supply chain economy, buying and selling services that are supporting it. And the most important thing is because we understand all of the complexities in cyber today, we approach security really differently than we did 10 or 20 years ago. Right? We build intelligence teams who are constantly tracking the criminal groups, figuring out what they're up to next. We've got multiple layers of defenses, looking for, to build new preventative and detective controls. Most importantly, we know that no matter how good we are at those things, they're still going to get in places, and you've got to be really good at responding and build resilient infrastructure. And so the point is, because we've learned over time that the hacker is not an individual, we know it's not about arresting the guy in the basement, it's about doing all these other things to combat a very complex problem. Now, when we talk about organized retail crime, we're still in a little bit more of an immature state there. When I say organized retail crime, I'm willing to bet most of you got a picture in your head that looked something more like the news stories you've seen over the last couple of years. Stories about an increase in shoplifting, or a provocative video you saw where maybe a gang was running into a store, grabbing a bunch of stuff, so smash and grab, just running out. And you think, well, we can solve that problem with more law enforcement, with locking up inventory. Certainly those things are part of the solution, but we're really just talking about the tip of the iceberg. So just like we think differently about the hacker in the hoodie today, I want us to start thinking differently about organized retail crime today. Starting with some of these things. Historically, we've really thought about theft and fraud as being either a physical problem, so stealing from a store, or an e-commerce problem. Log into a website, use a stolen credit card, right? And traditionally we've called that fraud. Think about how you shop today, though. Do those lines matter anymore? Right? You go online, you buy something, then you go to a store, you pick it up, or somebody brings it out to your car. Maybe a same-day delivery driver goes to the store for you and brings it to your house. Conversely, maybe you go to the store to physically purchase something, but you get to the register and you pull out your phone and you log into your e-com account because you've got a gift card stored in a digital wallet there, so you basically make an online transaction in store. And so the point is, today, that whole landscape of physical and e-com or digital is completely blurred from a consumer perspective, which means it's completely blurred from an attack perspective too. So you can't approach this problem as having clear lines. Also have to think about this, just like we talked about cyber, this entire economy, this supply chain economy of service providers. And then lastly, as you think about the problem, people tend to think about it in terms of a problem for a particular city or a state, country. But at the end of the day, these groups are coordinated across multiple states, across the nation, across the world in many of these cases. So I'm going to try to walk through an example without a slide, which I may lose you here, but I thought I'm still going to give it a try. You can jump in if I say something that doesn't seem to be easy to follow. But what I wanted to do is give a hypothetical example so we could kind of understand how these components might work together to understand the difference between kind of face value perception and the complexity we see when we investigate these kind of things. Okay, so a retailer is doing an inventory count. They're counting iPads. They're supposed to have 5, they have 4. So we're missing an iPad in a retail store. We call that shortage or shrink in retail. At face value, you might look at that and say, the obvious thing is somebody went into that store, stole the iPad somehow, and walked out. But take this scenario instead. Imagine it's much more complex. You have an international call center who calls a grandmother in New York, tells the grandmother her grandson is in trouble with the IRS, go to the store, buy a $500 gift card, and give it to me, and we can get him off in the next 24 hours. So the grandmother's really worried, follows through, goes and buys that card, sends a screenshot to the criminal in the international call center. Okay, now they have that $500 from the victim. How do they use that? Well, you could create an account online. You can load the gift card into that account, and you can purchase something to be shipped to your house, right? An e-commerce transaction. That probably would be easiest. But it's also easiest for us to catch from a fraud perspective, and they know that. So they're going to take a different approach, which is how can I get a hold of an account that has a couple years of good transaction history, and how can I load that gift card into that account so I can use the digital wallet in store, for example. And so they're going to use one of these service providers. They're going to go to an account shop. They're going to buy an aged account, something that's got a good history of transactions. They're going to load that item, load the gift card in there, and they're going to send it to their friend in, say, California, who's going to go into the store, grab an iPad, pay for it with those extorted funds. As they're paying for it, maybe just for a little extra pain, they know an employee discount number, so they're going to add it to the transaction. Right? They worked hard for that $500 extortion. Why give all $500 away if you can do it for $450? Right? Then they're going to walk out of the store. But where are we at this point? Do we have shortage? No, because there was actually a transaction. Right? They bought the iPad, so it's still not missing for the retailer. But now they're going to go back online to another service that specializes in scamming retailers out of refunds, and they're going to give the information of that order to the refunder, who essentially is going to figure out how to get the money back from the retailer and split the profits. I don't know if you followed all of that, but the important thing is this is a hypothetical example, but it is very, very similar to many of the things that we look at when we find some small issue and we pull that string and you start connecting the dots. These kind of organized scams that have these repeat aspects that have, like in this example, 4 victims, not just the retailer missing an item. This is really what we're talking about when we're talking about organized retail crime. Okay, where's all the growth coming from? Well, the growth today is really coming very similarly to what we saw in the cyberspace. Right? As soon as you started to be able to very easily purchase malware like it was a commodity, as soon as ransomware actors were able to start signing up as an affiliate to somebody else who was doing a lot of the hard work, you had scale. And this space is exactly the same. We have services, for example, if you want to get involved in fraud, You can go online, you can find a service that will help you commit that fraud, and you can split the profits like we talked about in the story. Education, if you want to be more directly involved, you can get a one-on-one mentor. You can buy books like Bob's Refund Handbook, and this is where you saw featured in the video earlier. Bob's Refund Handbook, for example, is 50+ pages that are teaching people how to scam retailers out of returns and refunds. And he's a rapper too, as we saw in the video. And most importantly, the thing that's different about these groups is all of this stuff is surprisingly public, because it has to be. Right? In order to make these services valuable, they have to be advertising, so they are constantly marketing these services. And so just about anybody can find these things, which means the way that ORC scales is exponential. Okay? All right, so when you look at these individual transactions, it's easy to look at those things and say, well, how could that possibly amount to a lot of money, right? We're talking about $500 here, a few thousand there. But you have to think about on a global scale, right? And at the scale that retailers operate, these numbers get big really, really fast. NRF launched a report that said about 13+% of returns are fraudulent, amounting to over $101 billion in 1 year. Gift card scams, over $200 million reported to the FTC in gift card scams, like the one I shared in the story. That number may not seem big, but you also have to remember that only about 5 to 10% of the time people actually report those scams. So the number is much, much, much bigger than that. And then you may look at things like loyalty programs and employee discounts like I used in my story and say, those things aren't really of high value, right? Who would spend their time trying to break in and take advantage of those things? I will tell you, anything of value is a target for these groups. And oftentimes it's very similar to the way that I told it in that story. You're already committing some other complex scheme. You might as well use these things to help increase your profits. So all areas of value are vulnerable, are targets for these groups, and we need to think about them all on a much bigger scale than the individual transaction. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jody to talk about how cyber can be more involved.
Steal that from you too. Yeah. So now it's going to get fun. I mean, your part's fun as well, but this is where it gets fun, where you get to see how we actually bring this to life when we apply cyber defense capabilities to disrupting ORC. So just like in cyber defense, it all starts with understanding the adversary, understanding their tools, their techniques, the tactics they're going to use against your organization. Because once you study them at that depth, you read Bob's book and you know what he wants to use against you, you can then take that information and just like we would in defense, you'd build the right prevention controls to stop them from being successful against your organization. And when prevention might be a bit too disruptive for the traditional consumer experience, that's when you're going to build the right detection so that you can see the anomalous behavior and then dig into that behavior to correlate the information together to either get a little bit more streamlined in your prevention or pull at that thread and build that investigation and build that full case so that you can partner with law enforcement and take down those larger rings. And that's what we've done. That's what we've done at Target over the last few years. So now what we'll do is we'll kind of ping pong back and forth and give you a few different examples of what this actually looks like for the various schemes they're conducting against the retail community. So refund fraud, Rich talked about this a little bit, but for us, of course, again, it started with researching the adversary. What techniques are they using against us? And we don't have to go far to conduct our threat intelligence in the ORC space. We just went out to TikTok. And I will apologize in advance. They do not censor themselves, so there's not awesome language in some of the images that you'll see, but it's up there fast and will go away for us. So I think I have to click on here. But you can see how much they want to brag to just get more customers buying their fraudulent service. And we'll look at one more example. You even want to put customer testimonials on their TikTok videos to brag about what they're even doing. I will say, when I was making this deck, my 12-year-old son ran into the office. He's like, "What are you listening to?" I think he was just hopeful I was done listening to Taylor Swift's album on repeat, maybe. But when you do freeze frame a few images in those TikTok brags, you start understanding how you can leverage them to your advantage and use it as your foundation for your threat intelligence capability to mitigate fraud and abuse. We see things like they leave the order number exposed. Thank you, that's extremely helpful because now my Intel team can go and look up that order number, see what account it's tied to, get some signals from that account and who's accessing that account, and then correlate that to maybe other accounts the threat actors are using and start understanding those patterns of behavior to identify those layers of fraud that Rich talked about earlier. Or customer information. What customers are they serving? So what does it look like when the bad actors go into their customers' accounts and use those accounts to conduct other fraudulent activity? Or last but not least, what are those patterns? Why is it that they're buying and returning a bunch of low dollar value items? What does that mean and what technique are they using in that instance? So as we leverage this threat intelligence, we are very fortunate that we have a strong foundation of a data science and engineering capability. So as we study those techniques, we can now start building the right prevention in order to disrupt this activity. So from gathering that intelligence, we identified 3 different core categories of refund abuse that these threat actors conduct against retailers. The first, Rich talked about this a little bit, advanced refunds. So this is where the threat actors sell their service. If you haven't heard of the group Noir, they were arrested about a year ago. But they were a well-known group that did this refund service on behalf of their customers. So basically what they want to take advantage of is the fact that retailers want to provide you a fast refund. So when you drop your box off at FedEx, UPS, etc., you get your money right then and there on scan at carrier. Well, the fraudsters love this because they want to send us back, and this happens, boxes full of potatoes, boxes full of batteries, just a random mix of items. I think they're trying to maybe match the weight of the product they're sending back. Or they'll go so far as to actually manipulate the label, leveraging invisible ink, so that that package will get lost in transit, and then we can't process the return and we'll refund them anyways. So that's one that they love, is the advanced refund at carrier scan. And then guests can keep. So retailers love to give you that surprise and delight moment. You're a good guest of theirs. They want to make sure they keep you engaged with them. And so let's say you purchase a cleaning product, you don't love the scent, and so you want to go and process a return online of that cleaning product. Well, the retailer might say to you, you know what, you're a good standing customer with us. Just keep the cleaning product this time, but we'll fully reimburse you. Well, they love that because then they want to figure out how can they get in good standing and take advantage of guests can keep. Or did not receive. I'm sure all of you have had issues with shipments you've received from retailers, and you make the call into customer service and you're like, I did not get the Apple Watch that I ordered. Send me another Apple Watch or just reimburse me. Well, they love to social engineer our contact centers and make these did not receive claims. So much so that they get so scripted that we can identify their exact script of what they're using in their conversation or their note that they might send to executives at Target to try to get that Apple Watch for free. So I mentioned the data science and engineering capability that we have. That's critical to this disruption because what we're able to do, okay, my sound went in and out. What we're able to do is integrate our risk engine directly into these guest experience flows so that we can enable a great guest experience with our fraud and abuse mitigation capabilities. Because what a lot of other retailers have to do when they're getting hammered by some of this abuse is they have to change the experience for all of us. So all of us have to wait for our returns to get back to the return center to get processed and the retailers to validate that they received what we said we were going to send them. That could take a week, 2 weeks. It's not a great guest experience. But when you leverage fraud and abuse to actually enable these great guest experiences, your risk engine can identify the bad and stop that transaction from being approved and differentiate the good so that you can still give those advanced refunds, do the guest can keep, address the did not receive claims. So we will switch gears kind of drastically to skimmers.
Payment skimmers, like we went back in time. What's he talking about skimmers, right? This was back in like 2005. But my favorite thing about security, nothing ever goes away, right? It just moves down the risk list and then eventually comes back up again. With organized retail crime, skimmers are back. A little bit different, but they're back. If we look at the last decade plus of protecting payments, which obviously is a huge deal for any consumer-facing business, it's interesting to think about how physical skimmers kind of started as the thing that people worried about, low-level crime. I remember when I was young, a retailer that was near my house, I first learned what a skimmer was because the cashier had one of those little devices and would take the card and do that, and I remember being on a local news story. But eventually, 2013 or so, we started to see really big breaches, POS malware, because the idea was why steal a few hundred cards at a time if you can, in a smarter way, steal millions of cards at a time. And so really the focus 2013 to 18 or so was a lot of focus on these really big breaches, focused on the POS systems. A lot of work went into securing those with point-to-point encryption and other solutions. 2018, criminals pivoted again and said, hey, stores are getting harder to attack, but what about online? Are you paying attention to your e-com sites? And then we saw digital skimming. Remember, the 2018 was the year of kind of MageCart became a household name. And so the idea was if I could load some third-party script onto your payment page, I can steal the payments the same way I could with the physical skimmer in store, but I can do it at scale on your e-com site. But here we are again, and notice there's the plus signs because nothing ever goes away. But here we are again, we're back to skimmers, and we're seeing a resurgence of this, but in a different way. Some of the more unique things around skimmers today are we see in the old world, buying commodity devices. Today, we see more kind of custom manufacturing of both the plastic overlays as well as some of the chipsets. We see Bluetooth capabilities, we see encryption of the data, so it makes it harder when a retailer finds a skimmer to be able to figure out what was actually taken or how many cards they actually got. And so we're in this world now where we're back to worrying about all of these things, but evolved skimmers in the world of organized retail crime being placed as part of an organized ring is something that most retailers are now spending more time on, something that never really thought this would be back on the top of the list. So I wanted to share a couple of solutions for anybody that's in the retail space or works anywhere in securing payments. If you go to the Target Tech blog, Target is our team is very involved in industry collaboration. We spend a lot of time, not just in developing things internally. We've got over 24 patents on security technology, but we really do believe security is a team sport. I know everybody says that. We believe it. Go out and read on the tech blog. You can see all of the open source tools that we've made available to the community. Two related to skimming that are very interesting is one called Merrymaker. Merrymaker is essentially a detection tool for e-commerce, and so you can use this to find if possibly third-party JavaScripts were being used on a site. And just maybe a plug for those thinking about PCI 4.0. PCI 4.0 requirement does require some of this, and so Merrymaker can be a solution to that as well. And we don't get paid for this, so I'm not selling it, but it's definitely interesting to take a look at. And then Easy Sweep is really the focus on physical skimmers. So back to the evolved physical skimmers we were just talking about. There's a lot of technology out there that costs a lot of money. You have to think about a retailer with thousands of stores and tens of thousands of lanes. Trying to figure out how to check payment devices for skimmers on a daily basis is really, really hard. And to do it at scale can be really expensive, either from a productivity standpoint or a technology standpoint. Easy Sweep is a funny, I'll call it a dumb little device. It's a penny's piece of plastic that costs pennies that essentially is measured in a way so when you dip it into the payment terminal, if it goes all the way in, you're good. If it doesn't go all the way in, something's stopping it, you have an overlay or a skimmer. And so we've deployed these across all of our stores. We've made this open, the design is open source. We've had over 100 companies and law enforcement reach out to get a hold of the designs. And so I would encourage you, if you're involved in this space, to take some time reading about that. All right. Another random return back to you now. There you go.
We should have practiced smoother transitions maybe between each topic. So gift card tampering. Rich talked a little bit about gift card extortion. I'm going to focus a bit on gift card tampering. We've seen this on the rise quite a bit really quite a bit since 2022. And then in 2023, this got really noisy as we were heading into holiday season. There's a couple of reasons for this. The main one I'll focus on is I'll sort of call back to that layered fraud approach again. The foundation of any of that starts with access to gift cards. So whether they do that through gift card tampering or gift card extortion, that's usually the start of where they want to conduct additional fraud. The other reason is all of us do tend to think of those images Rich popped up when we think about ORC. We think of the big smash and grabs. They're running in and grabbing a whole pile of purses, or they're running in and they're grabbing a whole pile of iPads, whatever that is. Well, that's not discreet. They can't run in and do a smash and grab and do that with very low risk. However, you can go into a retailer and very discreetly gain access to a lot of gift cards at once as you pull them off the shelves and put them in a bag and walk out the front door. And then very discreetly, the placers can walk back in and get those tampered gift cards back on the store shelves for us to buy on their behalf. And then they can go into the store and make a legitimate purchase of a bunch of iPads just using the gift cards that they legitimately have. That's much more low risk from being identified in the moment than the big smash and grabs, and they can do it at scale so much faster and effectively than they can the smash and grabs at retailers. So that's why we have to keep thinking about all of this complexity that's part of ORC. It's not just running in and stealing goods. So what are we doing as an industry? We have to take a very layered approach to this. I think a lot of people go to the prevention arm and you start thinking about the packaging of the gift card. Well, as long as that access code or that activation code is on the physical gift card that's on the shelf, that's never going to 100% stop the tampering. Yes, you can make the cards more timely for the threat actors to tamper with, but they're still going to tamper with them if that access code or activation code is on the back of that physical gift card. So we have to be able to balance the physical security controls of the gift card with system controls. Now, I'm not going to give away the industry's secret sauce. We do share a lot with each other around this space, but what I'll nod to is put on your threat intelligence hat again. What are the threat actors going to have to do in order to monetize or activate that entire chain of monetization for the tampered gift cards? Well, they're going to have to check the balances. They're going to need to understand when the cards are activated so that they can try to race and spend that money before the legit purchaser spends that money. So how do you use that to your advantage to disrupt that card from being sold out of your store? Or you start looking at what things are they buying with these tampered gift cards? What accounts are they using? What devices are they using? What is that pattern after the purchase? Are they doing returns? Are they trying to wash the gift cards? So as you look at that entire chain of activity, it gives you a lot of opportunities to disrupt their actions. Whether you disrupt them up front, or maybe you don't catch them there, you might be able to disrupt their cash out later on. So it's not lucrative for them anymore to be stealing gift cards from your store, because even if they get them, they can't cash them out. And so that's sort of how the industry's approaching the problem. But that's only one piece of it. You're never going to identify or disrupt everything. So how do you put the right detection mechanisms in place so that you start seeing anomalous behavior that was maybe just under your radar, so that you can start investigating that further and put more signals together, and then hopefully, in partnership with your peers and with law enforcement, start taking down these larger rings again. I don't know if some of you read this, but Homeland Security has openly shared that they are sort of spearheading an investigation with many, many retailers on what's starting with this gift card tampering activity, because it is so foundational to these large ORC groups, and we're seeing a lot of great action based on those efforts. And then last but not least, awareness. We talk about this in cyber all the time. The human firewall, our first line of defense. They need to be able to identify and report phishing emails. Well, the same goes here. We need consumer awareness. We need our store employee awareness so that they can identify these gift card extortion opportunities or these gift card tampering opportunities right on the first line of defense to try to stop it up front. And so the industry's spending a lot of time there as well. Oh, now you can show your creepy picture.
Well, before I do, I'm going to do audience participation on this one. Okay, so here's the scenario. Criminal shoulder surfs a cashier and gets their login credentials. Somebody yell out to me, so pretend you're the person, you have the login credentials to my register. What are you doing with it? What do you think you can do with that? Is it valuable? Nobody has a guess?
Do I get to play?
Sell it, okay, you could sell it. How would somebody monetize that? Log into it remotely. So it's a cashier authentication, so they're not going to have access to do that. Ryan, you're not allowed to answer.
Send the cashier to do a price check and open a register and
take the cash. That's the most common answer. Yeah. Okay. So I'll make you stop guessing. So that's not the answer, even though it says cash shortage, but that's a good one. There's easier ways to steal cash. There's easier ways to steal merchandise than checking yourself out. But take the scenario of gift cards. Back to gift cards. When do gift cards really get their value? At the register. And so we see this industry-wide problem of criminals shoulder surfing for credentials, and then essentially what they do is, to your point, either send them away or they go to an empty register somewhere, they log themselves in, and now you've got access to take a blank gift card and load $500 on it. You don't put cash in the drawer. So essentially it's a cash shortage problem driven by self-ringing of gift cards. So then the question is, how do you solve that problem? Are we done with audience participation? I'm still going to make you try. How do you solve that problem? What do you do? What's the security answer to that? MFA, I knew that was going to be one. What's another one? Simultaneous logins? Okay, like 2 keys to the register? Okay, the nuclear launch?
Yeah.
Okay, yep, that's good. That's good. Inactivity? Yep. Yep. Longer passwords is one people usually say, right? Harder, more complex passwords. So here's the thing, and here's one of the hardest parts that you've kind of maybe noticed as a trend along a lot of the solutions that we've talked about. But when you're in retail, you're operating at scale, the customer experience is so important. And so every problem that you try to solve that's either impacting the flow of things online or the checking out of customers in a store has really, really big impact from a scale perspective. So 2FA, while that would work, imagine standing at a register and you want to check yourself out and the cashier is sitting here going, hang on, I just have to get my access code, right? So what we did at Target to combat this problem is came up with our own solution we call MyPOS ID, which is interesting. We have many of our team members in the store actually carry around Zebra devices that they're already authenticated to do other things to help the guest check inventory and do other things. We created a solution where they can actually aim this at the register, click the button, do a scan of the screen, and essentially pass the authentication onto the screen. And so I just like this example because oftentimes you have to think about, we can solve this problem with a security kind of roadblock, but this is actually something that solved the problem in a way where it made the login easier for our team members regardless of the security risk. So how often do you get to roll something out where the team members or people who work for you are saying, great job, this makes my life easier. So it's an exciting one for us.
Yeah, but I think that's the theme of how we've approached fraud and abuse mitigation is it's all been about leveraging the capability to enable a great business or a great guest experience. Our last example here is bots, before I pass it over to Rich to wrap us up. We all know there's traditionally sort of 3 ways that bots attack retailers. The first is an oldie but a goodie on the DDoS side. And for most of us, that's largely the responsibility of mitigation has largely fell into the cyber lab. Like that's traditionally a cyber defense capability. We've gotten really good at that over the years across the industry. And then there's account takeover attacks. This is one where it's still a little bit gray. Cyber defense might own the upfront mitigation, leveraging the experience we've earned from mitigating DDoS attacks over the years. But the other piece, the cash out piece of account takeover, that might be owned by a different team entirely. It might be a finance team, you might have a .com transaction risk team, but there's not maybe one team that's seeing that entire life cycle of ATO. So what are the attackers doing up front? And then what are the attackers doing once they have access to the accounts, and what does that cash out look like? We've seen a ton of benefits from bringing those capabilities together centrally under one team so that you have the whole life cycle. Because that enables us to, get really aggressive and good at the upfront aggressive bot mitigation. But then when you have that low and slow, really sophisticated ATO activity, then you get a little bit more graceful, whether it's you're leveraging step up, you're leveraging account locks, whatever that is, but you can see sort of the trend and patterns of the threat actors. And then as it gets to cash out, as they want to leverage that account they're sitting on, whether it's to conduct refund fraud and try to do it in a good standing account, or they want to spend stored gift cards, they want to spend stored loyalty points, that team can stop the cash out. So again, you get back to that trend of even if other layers of defense aren't effective, if you can disrupt the monetization of the access, you're pushing them away from you either way because they can never make what they're trying to make by conducting all that activity against your organization. And then reseller bots. Typically, you've sort of viewed this as a business problem. You might use some of the solutions you're already leveraging for DDoS or even for ATO to start combating sneaker bots. But then it's sort of a business problem of, gosh, do they want to do a digital queue for limited time offer products? What does that strategy look like? What we've been able to do is similar to ATO, bringing those capabilities together so that we can see the whole life cycle of these reseller bots and figure out how to best address it. This is one that's been on the rise for the retail industry since really the beginning of COVID. We saw everything from trading cards to toilet paper to above ground pools being heavily targeted by these reseller bots. And now we see limited time offerings like the Stanley mugs, which I just still won't understand the craze with Stanley mugs, being targeted by these reseller bots. In this video, I'll call this sort of the in-store version of the reseller bots for the Stanley mug craze.
All right, time now for our last call. What's causing a stir at Starbucks and Target locations, you ask? It's the much coveted Stanley Cups. The limited edition bright pink cup released nationwide yesterday. It's causing long lines, overnight campouts, and mayhem. Mayhem, I tell you, at stores. The 40-ounce Quencher is the third product released from Starbucks in Stanley's Galentine's collection. The cup has been one of the most popular gifts of this holiday season, too. The mugs, they cost less than $50, but on eBay, they're now selling for over $200. And its durability has been on display in this viral video by a woman whose car erupted into flames, yet the Stanley Cup remained inside and intact.
It was in a fire yesterday. It still has ice in it.
I had to keep that part
That's why
in the
they're
video.
worth so much.
We bring back our panel now.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, what a great ad for Stanley at the end of that. Like, there's still ice in the mug, so maybe I can give in and buy one. But I talked about this a little bit on the slide before. And so how can we leverage, again, fraud and abuse to enable the business for the strategy that they want to take? And here, it's really important to us that we do whatever we can to make sure those limited time offerings end up in our good guest hands and they don't get gobbled up by the resellers where everybody has to then go and pay an inflated price. And so we've taken that same strategy I walked through in detail for ATO, and we use that against the disruption of resellers. So I try to block the bots, the more graceful, less automated activity, I try to slow down or disrupt with step up or locking accounts. And then if I still didn't catch you because you're, a teenager sitting in their basement that's just trying to purchase these over and over to make a few $100s, then I'm going to start blocking your orders and I'm not going to let you buy any more of the Stanley mugs, just like I wouldn't let you do if you were in the store with a cart of 10 of them. So with that, I think you'll wrap us up.
To the last one. All right, so that's what we had for you today. I think, like I said from the beginning, there's just a few things I'd love for us all to take away and help kind of be the evangelist going out and making sure people understand this is, remember the picture, the hacker in the hoodie? Ask yourself the same question when people say organized retail crime. How are they thinking about it? Think about some of the examples that we shared today so we get a broader understanding of the problem. And I know a lot of what we shared is retail specific, but keep in mind, these organized groups are working across different industries and doing similar types of things in a more complex way that isn't well understood in other industries as well. The second is the leveraging cybersecurity skills. We all have to think about in the future, in areas where there's opportunities for fraud and crime like this, cyber has to play a bigger role. Remember the discussion around the blurring of physical and digital. There's nobody that's going to be able to put those pieces together like cyber, and so we need to be educating the upcoming talent in cyber. We need to be spending time educating ourselves and thinking about how cyber can play a much bigger role in something that historically we haven't thought about as something in our scope. And then lastly, we have to work together. I said before, Target believes security is a team sport. There are many companies that stand behind that. In this space, we're still a little bit immature. Right? ISACs on the cyber side have been around for a long time. We've all gotten really comfortable with sharing information with competitors. In this space, it really hasn't been there for a long time. And so just encouraging everybody that's operating in this space to think about we need to build the same way we built the level of sharing around cybersecurity, ransomware, those kind of things. We need to build that level of sharing around these kind of organized groups as well if we ever want to have a chance of keeping up at the pace that they're evolving. So that's what we had for you today. We're not going to spend time on questions, but Jody and I will hang outside the room for a little bit, or you can find us on LinkedIn. But thanks so much for joining, and enjoy the rest of the week.